Hi, and welcome back to Swirls in the Bread Cafe. It's been a while since we've been able to sit down and chat, and I'm looking forward to it today. Last time we spoke about Genesis chapter 4, Cain and Abel, and now today we're going to talk about Genesis chapter 5. Got a lot to go through here in a short amount of time, so I want to get started. Genesis chapter 5 is the first lineage that we read about in the scriptures. And oftentimes when we get to these types of chapters, especially in a devotion, we want to skip over them. It's, so-and-so begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat so-and-so, and what does this have to do with anything? And initially, when you look at this, you say, okay, this is a lineage from Adam to Noah. Alrighty. What importance does it have? And let me tell you, there's a sweet swirl in there. I had heard in some research that I've been doing that, Noah means comfort. And that doesn't, it just didn't sit well with me because I thought, well, Noah had to build an ark to save his family because the world was so full of sin and evilness that God had resented and regretted making mankind that he was going to destroy the world. And how can you find comfort in that? But then you take time to read and to research a little bit, and it doesn't take much, and all of this comes to light. And his name is very important. The meaning of his name is very important. We don't put a whole lot of thought into it today when we name our children, but they sure did back in the Bible day. And hopefully I'll be able to put some of the pieces of the puzzle together as we go through this. The first thing that caught my attention, of course, is the longevity in Genesis chapter 5. Just let me go over a few things here with you. Adam lived to be 930 years old. Seth, 912. Enosh, 905. Kenan, 910. Mahalalel, 910. Jared, 962. Enoch, 365, but there's a reason for that. Enoch did not die. He was taken by God to go live with him and visit with him for a while. Methuselah, 969. Lamech, 777. And when we get to Noah, there really isn't a recording yet on when he died, how old he was when he died, but he was 500 years old when he gave when he and his wife gave birth to their sons. 500 years old. Now, I know in today's society there's an awful lot of talk and belief that these years don't really represent 930 years as we would know them today. And I have to ask, why? Why wouldn't they? When God created the sun and the moon, and he called it day, the 24 hours in a day, and there's so many days in a year, when did that change? There's nothing in recorded history to tell us that this amount of time used to be this, but now it's this. 930 years is 930 years is 930 years. And the reason why I am of the belief that they actually lived that long is because I also believe that when Adam was created perfect. He lived in a perfect place, breathed perfect air, ate perfect food, ate from a tree known as the tree of life, which put perfect nutrients into his perfect body. And these are things that we can't fathom because we have never been perfect. There is a time, and we'll get into it later, it's in Genesis chapter 6, when God said, okay, this is going to end. You will be immortal. And he put a timeline on our lives. But up until that point, the human body breathed fresh, clean air, even outside of Eden. And lived a long, long time. So we're dealing with the longevity here. And in that, I also want to say the other reason why I believe that they lived that long is because of the power of the Creator. We're dealing here with a powerful and perfect Creator. And their longevity just tells me that when He created Adam, He did so in such a way that even when sin entered into the picture, it couldn't immediately attack his human form. The power of the Creator. That's something to chew on for a while. But I want to bring out another swirl that I found pretty interesting, and that is that when Adam was living, so was Methuselah. Now, Methuselah was Noah's grandfather. So we have these patriarchs living in the same time frame. It isn't like today where we're lucky if we get to know our great-grandparents, let alone our great-great-grandparents. And I was blessed enough to know my grandparents. Never met my great-grandparents. But in this situation, it was great-great-great-great-great. Now, Lamech and Noah didn't know Adam personally. Didn't sit around the campfires with him. But all the way up to Methuselah, they did. So, interesting point here. We have the patriarchs, the first 10 patriarchs, as I'll call them, sitting around a campfire, listening to the first man speak. So, the keynote speaker of today's meeting is going to be Adam. And he is going to tell us what it was like to wake up in this beautiful garden with God standing next to him. And then what it was like to name the animals and to walk in God's presence and to talk with him and communicate with him just as I am with you right now. And then to be put to sleep and to wake up to find the love of his life lying next to him. They heard the story of creation from Adam's mouth. They learned of God's mercy, of God's grace, of God's anger, of God's redemption from the very first man who experienced it. That's a pretty sweet swirl. In that group, as I mentioned as I read the names, was the man Enoch. And apparently he took to heart what Adam was saying so much that he lived such a righteous life. I mean, to listen to Adam speak and to worship God and to know that God is still among them despite themselves, their human condition, their sinful nature, that he became such a righteous man out of all of them that God looked at him and said, Enoch, you won't die. You're a young man, 365 years old. You're a young man. I want you to come up here and visit with me for a while. Now, before he did that, he had sons. And the Bible tells us that his son that is recorded here is Methuselah. And we all know about Methuselah. You know, there's that old adage, you're as old as Methuselah. Well, Methuselah is the oldest recorded man to have ever lived. And I had to ask myself, why? Why? What's so significant about Methuselah? Well, in today's world, we don't take much time, as I said, to think about what we name our children. But they did back then. And I want to go over that. And we'll put together some of the pieces of this puzzle. Because I had to ask myself, why him? Why Methuselah? What significance is it that he had to be the oldest man? And, what's the purpose there? Well, Methuselah actually means, if you take the first part, muth, The root word means death. The second part, shalach, to bring or send forth. So his name means to bring or send forth death. Wow. He lived 969 years. His name was a prophecy. So it's almost like people knew that when Methuselah died, something was going to happen. Now, Enoch, in the book of Jude, we're basically told that Enoch was given a prophecy of the great flood. His father was given a great prophecy. And then he has a son, and he names him Methuselah, which means when this man dies, death is going to happen. And I'm pretty sure that every time, when Methuselah was a little boy, every time he got the sniffles or coughed or something, the whole village kind of went crazy because it was like, oh my God, don't let him die, It took him 969 years before he passed away. And there lies the significance of it. Again, God's mercy, God's patience, God's willingness to give man every opportunity to turn back to him. 969 years. I'm not going to take this boy when he's 15. I'm not going to take this man when he's 35. I'm not going to take this man when he's 210. I'm going to extend his life to 969 years, giving everybody in that time frame before and up to that point the opportunity to turn to me. It also means that the year he did die was the year of the Great Flood. And as I said, his father was given that prophecy, and we see it in the book of Jude, as well as in the book of Enoch itself. Enoch 106, chapters 13 through 17, and Jude 14 through 15. So, we see God's mercy again. But what's in a name? Okay, I've described Methuselah's, but let's put it all together. And this is the biggest swirl, the sweetest piece of the bite of the bread that I took when I was doing this devotion. And I can't take credit for it. I found it in my research. But I want to share it with you. It's very significant. Let's look at the 10 generations and their names. Adam means the first man. Pretty self-explanatory. Seth means appointed. Eve said, "For God hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew." I found it also interesting that she used the word seed and not son, because we know now that this seed is going to grow, and from that seed comes Jesus Christ. Enosh means mortal, frail. From the root word anash, to be incurable. It was in the days of Enosh that man began to defile the name of the living God. This is 2 generations, just 2 generations from Adam. Man began to defile the name of the living God. God has many names. Man got very, very irreverent for some reason. And I believe this is connected to Genesis chapter 6, and we'll get into that, but hold that thought, okay? Kenan means sorrow. Perhaps he was named Kenan because of the conditions and the circumstances around him at the time of his birth. If men began to defile the name of God, there is not going to be much happiness and peace on earth. So Kenan was born and his name means sorrow. Mahalalel means blessed God. The last part, E-L, last part of his name, El, God. That always means God. The first part of his name means blessed or praised, so we have blessed God. Jared means shall come down. That's interesting. Enoch, teaching or commencement. Now, Enoch was also the first preacher. He was the righteous one, and he was the first one to preach. And he and Noah were actually preaching at the same time. So he knew of the flood 700 and some years before it actually happened. And then when God told Noah to build the ark, because the flood was coming, and Noah preached to the people, repent, he and Enoch were teaming up. Methuselah, we have already gone over that. Lamech, despairing, to lament, lamentations, despair. Then Noah, to bring comfort. And here's the big swirl. Let's put them all together. Man appointed mortal sorrow, the blessed God shall come down, teaching his death shall bring the despairing comfort. Let me put that in an appropriate sentence. Man is appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God shall come down, teaching that his death shall bring the despairing comfort. The first 10 generations from Adam to Noah tell us of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Their names were a prophecy in themselves of the coming of our Savior. Isn't that wonderful? Now there's an organization out there run by liberals called Snopes who, say, no, this really doesn't mean this. And of course it doesn't. And I say that sarcastically. I think you would probably know, if you know me, that I give them no credibility at all. So I did some research a little further still. Why would they say that? So I dug a little deeper. And I came up with a few little different meanings of the names, but it came out to this. Earth is appointed man's sorrow or human sorrow, but the blessed God descended, teaching his death shall bring judgment, and to the lowly comfort. Let me say that again. Earth is appointed human sorrow, but the blessed God descended, teaching his death shall bring judgment, and to the lowly comfort. Not much difference there, is there? It's still a prophecy of the birth and the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I found that to be a terrific swirl in the bread, and I'm so glad I got to share it with you. And thank you so much for coming back and joining me here. And yes, we're going to get into chapter 6, and we're going to do it soon. But I want you to hold on to the note about Enosh, the time, 2 generations from Adam, when man began to defile the name of God. And we'll pick up in chapter 6. Thanks. I'll see you soon.